All right, Joe and Blasko.
Joe.
How you doing, buddy?
Blasko. I'm good. Good morning.
Good morning to you. So I actually have a topic that I want to throw at you. This is the first.
Oh,
this
boy.
Is the first of it.
Okay.
So, we're going through the rehearsals for our May 9th event. And so there's a lot of things that are occurring to me that that you really can't spend the time on stage to do. So I wanted to take and pepper our show with some stuff they can go back and watch.
Okay.
And we can reference during that.
Oh.
And one of my things is I work with a lot of broken people, right? People recovering from addiction.
Right.
And so they're on the comeback. Like they hit the bottom every opportunity and whatever they, dropped a nuclear bomb on with their choices. And so there's a lot of people who messaging doesn't really, work for, right?
As in you reaching out to them to message them? Or
Messaging as in an inspirational quote does absolutely nothing for them because they don't even believe that stuff is even possible. Okay. And so like I spend a lot of time, in the suck personally and with other people. So I want to talk about the suck for a little bit.
Let's talk about the suck.
And it's tough because this is off brand for both of us. Like you don't, yes, everybody goes through tough times and you don't want to identify with the suck, right? If you talk about the suck and you complain about the suck and that's all you ever do is describe the suck. So somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey Brian, how's it going?" And you're like, "It sucks,"
right? Right.
And then your subconscious gets programmed to constantly be in pursuit of the suck. And so you've dealt with the suck, I'm assuming.
Right.
Give me your rule set for governing suck.
Listen, people think because I'm a motivational speaker, I'm rainbows and butterflies all the time. I'm not. There are days where I wake up and I'm like, whew, this is going to be a tough one to get through for whatever reason, whether it's something personal or something professional or something I have to do. What I focus on is moments. So every day there are numerous things that happen. And I just had this conversation with someone in New York this week. A young guy I was talking to was going through some stuff, and we tried to sit down and just, try to give him some advice. And I had mentioned, what's the problem? He said, everything. I go, that's the problem number one. I go, you woke up this morning, right? You're standing right in front of me. You're wearing clothes. So everything can't be bad because I saw a homeless guy naked taking a deuce in the street the other day. That sucks.
Big time.
That's a horrible day. That's everything wrong. So I try to get people and myself to realize that everything is not bad, but maybe there are specific things bad. It's even like, let's say you have a birthday party. It's a horrible party for whatever reason, but there was a 10-minute moment where you played with your nephew for, 10 minutes. It was a great moment. He laughed, you laughed. So later on when someone says, how was the party, even though it sucked, you shouldn't say the party sucked. You should say, oh my gosh, I had this moment with my nephew. We spent 10 minutes So focus on that moment. Even though the party maybe sucked, focus on that moment that didn't suck. So anytime I get in a rut, I know you should never compare yourself to others, and I try not to. And that's one of the things I preach to my kids and people all the time. Stop bitching and moaning about what you wish you had and want and start appreciating what's right in front of you. Because sometimes what's right in front of you is beautiful. But we're so worried about what we want or think we need that we lose sight of this. So I decided to focus on this. I woke up this morning, I'm sitting here, I'm drinking a coffee. To this, 10 of these a day, but this could be the most special thing in 2 months that they ever had. Yep. So don't take for granted things that we have going for us in the right direction. So to answer your question, I think is I deal with the suck by realizing there's more non-sucky than sucks, if that makes sense. But you got to retrain your brain. You got to shift your mindset.
Yeah. And so like why the suck? Like I look at the suck as sort of like going to the gym, right? And
that does suck. I'm not going to lie to you. I try to go 3 days a week. I hate it. But go ahead.
So I had probably from August through like yesterday, I was in a big suck. And notice we had a lot of interactions in that time.
Right.
Not a single time did I describe it to you.
Right.
Mention it to you.
Complain about it
at all.
Your demeanor didn't change?
Not at all.
Okay.
All right. And so I have that rule where I don't identify with it. I keep myself connected. But I didn't want to hear, like I wasn't at my best. Like I wasn't rainbows and butterflies. I have this little motivational thing that pops up on my phone every morning to remind me to.
Is it a picture of me?
It's a picture of you. Yeah. But I didn't want to even see it or hear it.
Okay.
And so I was getting this perspective. As there's a lot of people when they hear me talk, aren't ready and aren't willing to let that stuff permeate because the suck is what's taking priority, and that's all their attention and
Want to
energy.
focus on that.
Yeah, is getting over it. And I look at the suck as sort of, for me, is like Groundhog Day. You know how like Bill Murray had to keep going through that day till he picked up on really what he should be getting from that moment. And when he figured it out, the suck goes away.
And the next day he incorporates that new thing he learned into the... Okay.
All right. And then sometimes the suck is a weekend of suck. Sometimes it's a whole season of suck. And so like 4 months was going really long for me. Usually I'm not in that rut for a really long time. But I kept saying, well, I'm not getting something. Like there's some data and information in here that I haven't figured out quite yet, and so it's being repeated to me. Thank God I keep giving more chances to get this thing right until I get it right. And I guess the more you get down the road, those lessons become a little bit more sophisticated and dynamic, and they take a little while to figure out. Almost like you go to the gym and you do cardio versus you get in front of a trainer and like, whoa, there's a whole lot more to this than I thought going into it.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, it has to do with, speaking of hitting rock bottom. So my niece, Sam Blasko, who will be opening for our show May 9th, she is unbelievable. You got to come down and see her. She has a lyric, and she's a singer-songwriter. She writes her lyrics. She writes the music. She's very talented. It's one of the best lines I ever heard, and I'm probably going to screw it up, so I won't quote her on it, but it's something about, I never knew rock bottom had a basement. And I thought it was just powerful that once you think you hit and then
it dips a little lower, right?
It was just profound. It was. I'm going to have to ask her exactly what the specifics were, but it was something about, I found out, that was the day I found out rock bottom had a basement. So even when you think it's.
Yeah, and some of those addicts that I work with, they've almost gotten a special superpower. Like, you can't destroy them. They've already been through so much shit that you really can't take a chunk out of them because of how strong they are. So they're weak in one department, but they are uber strong in a different department.
And if they can just start focusing on that thing, they're uber strong. Yeah, I don't try to save people. I mean, listen, do we try to help people think differently? Yes, but it's obviously them that has to take the driver's seat. But I'm a firm believer, and I talk about this in my speeches all the time, that we have the power and ability to influence more than we realize. And my one colleague years ago used to say the old phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but
can't make him drink.
However,
there's more to this.
However, you can give the horse salt tablets.
Make him thirsty.
So realistically, you can't make him drink unless you take his big horse head and shove it in the water, but you can do things to influence the horse to want to drink. And I think that is my career in a nutshell. I'm not up there on the stage saving people. I'm just giving information and ideas, and it's up to them to take the driver's seat. Can I influence them and guide them and try to pull them in this direction? Sure. But in the end, it's someone...
It's got to be them.
Right. But we can definitely influence. We can change people. And I'll talk about that probably on May 9th. I'm a firm believer. And a lot of my colleagues, you can't change someone unless they want to. Right. Yeah, but I give a lot of examples of how that's not true. There have been times where we haven't wanted to change, and all of a sudden something happens and we change, but we didn't go into the situation thinking, ooh, I'm going to change. It just happened because of someone else's influence.
Yep. So in a nutshell, don't identify with a suck. Use it as your gem where you get all the good out of it that you possibly can, and try to get out of it at the minute possible that you can.
And don't ignore it.
No.
Admit it. All right, I'm in a shit situation right now. I'm in a rut. I'm in a rock situation. And it sucks. Okay, I've identified it. Now I can sit over here and dwell and moan about it, or I can figure out what steps I need to take to get out of it. That's profound. And that's a good thing, JoJo.
All right. So
are you out of the suck now?
What's that?
Are you out of the suck now?
I'm out of the suck.
Okay.
And some of it was me deciding that's been enough, and I've gotten everything I need to learn. And some of it, it's everything started blooming the minute that I took focus off of it.
Well, I think it's funny that you said that even in those times when you're down or in the suck, you don't want to be lifted up or motivated or read something. And I get that.
Yeah.
People always come up to me when they find out what I do. What are you? I'm a motivational speaker. I always say professional speaker, because the moment I say motivational speaker, you think Chris Farley down by the river, which is fine, But I always consider myself a professional speaker. But people come up to me. It's like, I think we may have talked about it. It's like a comedian being at a party. Someone's like, come up, make me funny.
Yeah.
Let me say something funny. So I get people all the time. Motivate me. Okay.
Take out the trash.
Right.
Go.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. That was good. Okay. Let's talk spirits, but not the kind of spirits that you and I enjoy. We're not talking.
Not these kind of
We're not
spirits.
talking. No, we are.
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
we're not talking ghosts and
Ghostly
apparitions.
spirits.
No.
Oh, man, you're
No.
disappointing me here.
We're talking about booze.
Okay.
Liquor.
Let's talk about booze
The
and liquor.
hooch.
Okay.
I saw you post something recently
Yeah?
regarding Angel's Envy.
Yes.
Are you a bourbon dude?
I love bourbon.
Have you become or always have been?
Just become. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it until probably last 5 years or so.
What flipped the switch for you? Because I can't drink it.
I don't know.
It's, every time I smell it and smip, ooh, my brother loves it. But okay, so you like it?
I do.
Sipping it
Sipping it, definitely.
on the
sipping.
rocks or neat? I guess is no rocks. Neat
Yeah,
is just
no rocks. I'm a sipper.
you're a sipper.
Yeah.
And I did see you tried to smoke some bourbon.
Oh, it was the best.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't like sweet things.
Okay.
All right. And maybe that's it. Maybe I got into bourbon because I cut sugars out. And so bourbon tastes different to me because I don't do sweets anyhow.
Okay, right.
But anyway, so you make an old fashioned and you put some extra things in it that sweetens it up a little bit. And I'm not a real big fan of the sweet whiskey kind of thing.
Okay.
But then you put that smoke in there and it's a different thing.
Changes everything.
Yeah, I went down to Chattanooga where I had my first old fashioned, and they did it right. They had this big apparatus, and they pumped the smoke into it. It's the best drink I've ever had.
Really?
Yep.
So there's a cherry garnish in that. Is there cherry juice
Yeah.
in that old fashioned that makes it sweet, or vermouth, or no bitters?
No,
I don't
they
know.
do bitters.
Okay,
They do some simple syrup.
That's it. Simple syrup is
Yep.
what I was looking for. So it's basically whiskey with a
Yeah.
little simple syrup.
Yep. Some citrus, a cherry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bourbon, I just can't get into it. So Angel's Envy is the favorite, or
I mix it up.
Okay.
Right? So I kind of have my daily favorites, and then I like to try a new brand every month or so. And I think sometimes it's just because I deliver myself something that I've never tasted before, and then it becomes my favorite. Right?
Okay.
Not really my favorite, but my favorite.
I got
make
one for
sense?
you to try.
Okay.
Mad Dog 2020.
I don't think so. Even saying that brings something up in your brain.
Oh.
You've had an experience. I
I have a
experience.
Mad Dog story. We don't have enough time on the
What
air.
flavor?
Grape.
Oh, not great.
The original grape. It is the best story with Mad Dog ever. I'll tell it on the air someday. It is. Put it this way. There's a 25-year span in between the story.
Okay.
So something happened, and then 25 years later, something happened just like...
Is this like a cliffhanger? Like
It is unbelievable. It is a funny story. It's not a bad story. It's just a funny story. I don't know if we have time for me to tell it, but it is...
Come on, you got to tell it now.
Okay, I'm going to tell
Let's
it.
do it.
This is the best story ever. This goes out to my brother Dave Blasko, Tony Orlando, and Danyi Blasko. Freshman year in high school,
Okay.
1987 for me. 86, 87. My buddy Donnie and I are freshmen. My brother Dave is a senior. So him and his friend Tony say, hey, we're going to take you guys out for wings. We're like, oh, this is great. We're freshmen. We're hanging out with the seniors. We're going to go get wings with everyone. We're going to be cool. So my brother and I leave my parents' house. We pick up Donnie. We pick up Tony. We don't go get wings. And by the way, to preface this, they told us don't eat all day because we're going to have wings. So we're like,
this is the setup.
oh, yeah.
Like they were.
So we're not eating all day. We're like waiting to go get these wings. They pick us up. We go right to Sammy Quick Stops. One of the Sammy Quick Stop back in the day. They get 2 big bottles of Mad Dog Grape 2020. They go, here you go. Drink up. So me and Donnie are like, okay. So we're in the back of the car. We're drinking this Mad Dog. And again, I don't promote underage drinking, but we did it. We get blasted. I mean, they go through Sammy Quick Stop again. We get another bottle. We split it. To make a long story short, we drop Donnie off at home. His aunt, ironically, is staying in his room from out of town. He walks into his room and, like in the movies, throws up all over his aunt who's lying in his bed. He gets in trouble. I'm throwing up in the car, outside the car before we get back to my parents' house. It's just a horrible evening. Okay. Fast forward 25 years.
Oh, no.
We were in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on a golf trip. Ironically, Donnie, myself, my brother Dave, and Tony Orlando are on this trip. Now, Donnie and I are decent golfers. Dave and Tony are decent, but they're, we think they're not at our level. So we say, all right, you guys, let's bet. What do you want to bet? And one of them says, Mad Dog. So me and Donnie are like, all right, we're going to win this. But they're like, you have to give a stroke. So we were cocky. We said, all right, we'll give you 9 strokes a hole. Or 9 strokes a side, which is 18 strokes total, which is basically a stroke a hole. We lose. Those idiots put us in the car, drive us to the nearest drive-through, and get Mad Dog 2020. And 25 years later, we had to drink another bottle of grape Mad Dog.
Now,
Did not throw up that time.
You did not throw up.
No.
You were able to handle the Mad Dog
Right.
later in
In
life.
fact, I think they even let us pass it around to some, because there was like 15 guys on this trip. But it was just, it's a funny story. It's a funny Mad Dog story.
Now, did it taste as good when you were
Tasted
older?
just as bad.
Just as bad.
I wanted to throw up from smelling it. But that's a great Mad Dog story.
Oh, Mad Dog was so terrible.
All right, let's talk about your brownies.
Yeah.
What's up? I mean, is this like a Cinderella story here with Flacco?
Yeah.
I mean, the dude's a stud. He's got a Super Bowl ring already. I don't know if people
They
realize
have been
that.
peppering the roster with a lot of talent over the last couple of years, but they just couldn't get it to click in, right? You always had something that would disturb the mojo of the team. And this year, I don't think it was a design thing to have it click. It just happened to click. So it was a matter of time before that happened.
I don't follow football enough. When is their next game? In
Saturday, 4:30, they're playing the Texans.
And this is the playoffs
This
starting.
is the playoffs.
Boom.
First round of playoffs.
Make it or break it. Dude, we have home field advantage.
No, we're in Texas.
We're in Texas.
Yes.
Is that
we
a
are
good
the
thing or
favorite
bad?
we do better at home.
Because it's cold and we're used to it. No?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe.
part of me thinks that when those Miami teams
I think
and
it's-
Texas teams come to Youngstown or Buffalo, they have to go where it's cold.
Yeah.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, because Miami's going to, I think, somewhere cold climate, I think, and they're going to get trounced because,
Right.
whatever.
It changes things.
But anyway, I think it's the fans in Cleveland. I think the fans are just so unbelievably loud and intimidating. I think psychologically they give Browns an advantage when they're at home.
And they're loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're passionate and they're loyal. I got to give them that.
Yeah.
Okay. You had a quote the other day, and I liked it, and I almost chimed in, but I could not go down that rabbit hole because anytime I chime in, I feel like I'm never getting out of that. It was a quote, and someone made a comment, and I was going to comment on her comment, and it wasn't a bad thing that she had said, and I won't mention any names, but your post was, it really got me thinking. You can't improve what you don't measure. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
You can't improve what you don't measure. And then someone wrote, can I read what they wrote? Or, I mean, I won't read the name, but I mean.
I almost know which one you're talking about
okay,
because
it's there, and I wanted to chime in so bad. Can I read no, I won't read the person's name. I'm just going to read.
Yeah,
So your
absolutely.
quote was, you can't measure what you don't, you can't
improve what you can't
improve
measure.
what you can't measure.
Yep.
And someone said, I'm not sure that's accurate. You can become a better artist with no clear way to measure. You can clearly improve in all sorts of intangible ways without ever measuring it, from comprehension of a foreign language to learning to crawl. We can improve in thousands of ways that are never measured. They're all measured. Because if you learn a foreign language that you didn't know the day before, you could measure your new knowledge by knowing you had none before. If you're learning to crawl and you crawl 3 steps one day and then 6 the next day, you could measure the improvement of the crawl based on the 3 this day versus the 6 this day. So I wanted to chime in and say everything is measurable. You don't have to look at it as a bad thing or trying to compare, but how do you know you're better at something unless you measure it against something else? Everything is measurable. So I would love to have a conversation with that individual just to kind of, was that the one
That was the gist
about?
of it, yeah. And so, like, I guess the argument would be things that you don't think should be measured. That's reasonable.
I'll take that.
Right?
Right.
So if you're, a vocalist, and if somebody came up to you and said, well, I measured your pitches and they're just not as good as they were yesterday, then psychologically you might check out and not pursue singing anymore versus not measuring it and letting you develop that, whatever. Because so that's a good argument, I guess. But if you want to improve something, you have to have a metric to begin with.
Starting point.
Total starting
Right.
point, and then figure out how to make it better 1% over the period of time.
Right. It doesn't have to become your life's mission, but I don't know. That just struck a chord with me, not in a bad way, but I started to think everything's measured. We can measure the success of our show based on the first episode we watch to now. It could be better or worse, and some days are better than others, but I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, it's good. There's not only one way to measure something, like some things that you are comfortable with. So if it's my running, right? The ultimate measurements is I want to run a marathon. I haven't run a marathon, right? Should I not time my runs? Should I not look at my distances? Should I not know where I'm at last year versus this year?
Right.
And, I could do it completely in the blind, but going into that race, I would not know if I was ready for that race unless along the way I was like, okay, I did 1 mile and I did 4 miles and my breathing was okay and my heart rate was okay. And then I go into that with some confidence. So
yeah, so it's like a boost.
for sure.
Yeah, so anywho, I think everything can be measured, from relationships to your interpersonal communication to your leadership to whatever, your yard and the grass
let me
growing.
introduce this to you, because this was a bad measurement that I made early on in my professional career.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Manchu list? Okay.
Manchu.
Manchu.
Okay.
And so basically what it is you evaluate all the people that you know in relationships.
Okay.
Right? And you give them a rating system about what they can provide, what opportunities they're connected to, what role they play in the things that you want to pursue. And you order your interactions and your socials and your dinners and whatever based on what they could provide for you in the professional world. And I had these spreadsheets that had people and how I ranked them and how important they were into my success going down the road.
Okay.
So I basically looked at you
Okay.
and said, what role could Brian play in my future? If you were a 0, I might not set the dinner date. I might not hang out with you as
Right.
much. But there's someone who was a 7 really had a runway with me. I knew that if I hung close to you, the good things were going to happen, and I was more likely to set those dates and interactions
Okay.
were. But it poisoned what my relationship with relationships absolutely was, because everybody was ranked and measured that way. And it broke me in a certain way. It took me years to start like setting a date with someone without knowing what's in it for
Or
us
what
or
you're
me.
going to get out of it.
Exactly.
So you started looking at situations as to what can I not necessarily get from this person, but what can I...
100%.
And it clouded everything else because you were only... all right, that's
I only
good.
had so much time, and I wanted to make sure I was investing in
Right,
the things
right.
that were going somewhere.
And you sometimes lose the moment. That
Absolutely.
can be magical.
Yep.
That's good that you had self-awareness to realize that. Was I a 2?
Don't break me again, Brian. Don't break me.
Well, we're together now, and on May 9th, we're doing a show. So I think everyone needs to go out to dinner, hit one of our local restaurants downtown. Our show is 7 o'clock, but Sam Blasko will be playing from 6:30 to 7 o'clock. It's going to be a night of inspiration and motivation. You're going to hear from Joe. You're going to hear from both of us at one point. You're going to hear from me. It's going to be wild.
Let me tell you, this is kind of cool. We're getting local restaurants down here to set aside some VIP tables for the people who are going to the show. We have the Bistro has a couple of VIP tables set aside for us. We have the Federal set aside a couple of them. And we're talking to some of the bars that maybe after the show have some drink coupons that you can go out and get a drink after our show as well.
We're going out after for sure.
Yeah, what's your
You
after
and I are
party?
going to have a cocktail
Absolutely.
after. Maybe I'll even try bourbon.
Will you? And I will supply you with a good experience.
Okay.
And it will not be Mad Dog for
Okay,
sure.
all right, good. All right.
That's it. We'll see you
done.
next time.